Everyone in the ballroom froze. Just seconds ago, my husband and his boss were laughing at me in front of the entire company, mocking my dress, my silence, my presence. But then, I walked up to the CEO and whispered only 10 words. 10 dots. Suddenly, the smirks vanished. The CEO's eyes widened. His handshake became firm, respectful, and my husband, his face drained of color like he'd seen a ghost. He had no idea who I really was. The woman he had been dismissing for years. The wife he'd paraded around like a prop was. The one holding the very future of his career in her hands. Why did I keep my identity hidden for so long? Why did I invest millions into the company without ever attaching my name to it? And why, after all this time, did I choose this moment to reveal it? This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story of quiet strength, painful secrets, and a twist so powerful. It turned the entire gala upside down. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been laughed at by the people who were supposed to protect you, you'll want to hear how this story ends. And trust me, that whisper, it was just the beginning. If life's ever taught you a hard lesson, you want more stories that make you feel seen, vindicated, and inspired. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, so when you're busy, you'll still catch these true-to-life dramas later. We've got more coming. What would you do if the person who hurt you depended on you to survive? Let's go back just a few weeks before that unforgettable night tan. See how it all began. The first time I met Ryan, he offered me his umbrella in the middle of a thunderstorm and then cursed at it when it flipped inside out. I laughed so hard I almost forgot I was soaked. He was charming, ridiculous, and for a while he made me feel like the most cherished woman on earth. We married fast. Maybe too fast. But back then, I didn't question much. I was just grateful someone finally looked at me like I mattered. Ryan's charm, however, was skin-deep and temporary. After the wedding, he gently nudged me away from my art gallery. Just take some time off, he'd say. I make enough. For both of us, I didn't protest. Not at first. He seemed proud to provide, but as months turned into years, the time off turned into, why don't you just stay home? Then slowly, I became invisible. It wasn't all dark. There were moments, sweet ones. Like when I found a photo of us tucked inside his wallet, worn and folded. Or when he'd bring me coffee in bed after I caught the flu. Small mercies in a sea of absence. But when he got promoted at work, something in him shifted. He started calling me the quiet type at dinners, said it like it was a flaw. He stopped asking about my day. He talked about his boss, Greg, as if the man were a god. I'd never met Greg, but I already didn't like him. Something in Ryan's voice when he spoke about MET wasn't admiration, it was desperation. And then the gala invitation came. He handed it to me like a favor, not like I was his wife. There'll be investors, big names, he said. Try something elegant but low-key, okay? Low-key. That was his favorite word for me lately. Not brilliant, not beautiful, just ... low-key. I picked a navy blue gown from a small boutique owned by a friend I once mentored. She teared up when she saw me in it. You look like a woman who owns the room, she whispered. I smiled but didn't believe it. That night, Ryan barely glanced at me as we walked in. He hovered near Greg like a lost intern, not a department head. I sipped champagne alone at our table, watching as Ryan whispered something to Greg. Both of them glanced my way and laughed. Something cold slid down my spine. A few minutes later, Greg approached. Ryan tells me, you single quotes, retired. He smirked. I forced a polite smile. I prefer the term selectively engaged. He laughed, loud and condescending. You know, not every woman is cut out for the business world. Some are just born to support. I don't know what hurt more, his words, or Ryan laughing right alongside him. And then something clicked. I didn't cry. I didn't walk out. Instead, I looked across the room and saw a familiar face. Mr. Hill, CEO of the entire corporation. We had met once before, in a very different context. One Ryan knew nothing about. I stood up, heart pounding not with fear, but with clarity. Excuse me, I said, and walked away from the table. Greg raised an eyebrow. Ryan didn't even notice as I approached Mr. Hill. A waiter accidentally brushed past me, nearly knocking my purse to the ground. Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am, he said, trying to help. It's all right, I said with a smile. It happens. He looked at me more closely. Wait, are you Mrs. L? I nodded slightly. Keep that between us. His eyes widened, but he nodded. There's always one witness before the storm. I reached Mr. Hill, leaned in close, and whispered 10 quiet words. Just 10. And that was the moment everything changed. She cooked, she cleaned, she waited. but when her husband walked through the door, he barely noticed her. His words were sharp, his tone dismissive as if her love had an expiration date. Their son watched quietly from the corner, sensing something was wrong. The laughter in the house had faded long ago. At dinner, she shared an idea about redecorating the living room. He scoffed. "Do what you want, just. Don't expect me to care." She smiled faintly, masking the sting in her heart. Later that night, she tucked their son into bed. He asked innocently, "Mom, why don't you laugh like you used to?" Her throat tightened. She kissed his forehead and whispered, because sometimes grown-ups forget how the next morning she served his favorite breakfast pancakes shaped like smiley faces. Trying to impress someone, he muttered. She replied with a soft chuckle, just trying to keep the peace. He didn't laugh, but their son did, and for a moment, that was enough. At the annual charity gala, everything sparkled except her. Samantha wore the only dress she could afford, carefully altered by hand. It was modest, timeless, and apparently laughable. When she entered, all eyes turned. Not in admiration. In amusement, whispers slithered through the room like venom. Is that what she chose to wear? Looks like someone raided a thrift store. Her husband's colleagues didn't even mask their smirks. One woman actually took a photo with flash and chuckled, but he said nothing. Worse, he laughed along. Samantha's cheeks burned. She tried to sip her champagne, but her hands trembled. A drop fell on the front of her dress. Someone gasped, laughed louder, and her husband. He clinked glasses with the woman beside him, barely glancing her way. That was the moment her heart cracked, not from the mockery, but from the silence of the man who once promised to protect her. She excused herself. In the bathroom, under the two bright lights, she stared at her reflection. Mascara running, lipstick smudged, dignity shattered. But then, a voice behind her. "Honey, don't let those Botoxed peacocks get to you. You look like a real woman. That terrifies them." An older janitor, grinning kindly, handed her a tissue, and somehow that made her laugh. Through tears, but laughed nonetheless. She walked out with her head high. The whispers were still there, but something inside her had shifted. For the first time in years, she wasn't shrinking, she was rising. The room was buzzing with tension. The glossy wooden tables stretched like a battlefield between the two sides of the family, and the air carried a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Lisa sat quietly beside her husband Thomas, the CEO of Dawson Enterprises. Her posture was elegant, calm, but her fingers betrayed her. They trembled slightly under the table as she gripped the edge of her dress. Thomas, tall and composed, held his wife's hand gently beneath the tablecloth. He leaned toward her, whispering in a tone only she could hear, "They're trying to corner you. Be careful what you say." Lisa gave a subtle nod, then turned to face the rest of the family seated. Opposite, his parents, Margaret and Gerald, were glaring. They hadn't spoken a word directly to Lisa in 20 minutes. Only murmured passive-aggressive comments as if she wasn't there. "I just think," Margaret said at last. Her voice sharp as crystal, "It's strange that you never mentioned your past. In this family, we value transparency." Lisa took a breath, steadying herself. She had practiced this moment for years in the mirror. But before she could speak, Gerald cut in. "We did a background check. Lisa, standard procedure when someone marries into a company like ours, you forgot to mention something." Lisa's heart dropped. Thomas looked stunned. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Lisa stayed still. Ice crawled up her spine. She had feared this day, but not so soon. Gerald tossed a folder onto the table. It slid toward Lisa, stopping inches from her hand. With deliberate calm, she opened it. Inside were photographs, old ones, black and white. A young girl barefoot, standing next to a rundown trailer. A different life, a forgotten name. Thomas grabbed the folder and flipped through it. "What is this?" Margaret folded her arms. "Her real name isn't Lisa Howard, it's Emily Hart. She changed her name 12 years ago, and do you want to know why?" Lisa stood up slowly. Her eyes were wide but not afraid anymore. "Because I had to survive," she said. "Because no one would listen to a foster kid from a trailer park. Because I wasn't going to let my past define the rest of my life." Thomas looked from his wife to his parents, stunned. "You were born as Emily Hart," Gerald said coldly, "and your foster record includes charges of theft, truancy, and running away. Why would someone like you marry a CEO, unless there's something in it for you?" Lisa's jaw tightened. She stepped toward Gerald, calm but firm. "You think? You've uncovered some dark secret, but you have no idea what I went through. Yes, I ran away from foster homes. I stole food because I was starving. I slept in shelters and defended myself against people twice my size. But I never took anything that wasn't mine. I built a new life from nothing, and I didn't marry Thomas for his money. I married him because he saw me for who I really am, Thomas stood, protectively placing himself between Lisa and his parents. I don't care what her name was, he said. I care about who she is now. She's the strongest woman I've ever known. Margaret scoffed. Strong or manipulative? That's still unclear. Lisa turned to Thomas and hesitated, then whispered something in his ear. He blinked, his brows furrowed in confusion. What? He said softly. Lisa took his hand. They deserve to know, and you do too. She turned to face everyone. There's something else I never told you, and I didn't think I'd have to, but since we're all being honest now, she paused. I used to work for your company under a different name. I was an assistant in the logistics department before Thomas even noticed me. Margaret raised an eyebrow. Lisa continued, and while I was there, I discovered a file, a series of suspicious offshore accounts linked to Gerald's name. Millions siphoned over the years. The room fell silent. Gerald's face drained of color. What are you insinuating? I'm not insinuating anything. I printed the files and gave them to someone I trust in case something ever happened to me. If you want to ruin my life with my past, fine, but I won't let you hide your sins behind my scars. Thomas stared at his father. Is this true? Gerald stammered. She's lying, but the trembling in his voice said otherwise. Lisa stepped back, breath heavy, heart racing. The battle had just begun. For days, the house had been filled with tension. Everyone tried to act normal, but it was clear something had shifted. After the reading of the will, questions began swirling around Jennifer, her past, her real connection to the family, and why she reacted so strongly to Richard's death. It wasn't just grief, it was fear. One evening, Emily sat in the dimly lit living room, flipping through one of her father's old photo albums. As she turned the pages, her fingers paused on a picture she didn't recognize. It was dated 1989. Her father stood beside a young woman who looked strikingly like Jennifer but younger, with a different hairstyle. On the back, in her father's handwriting, it read, "Me and Elle, the summer, everything changed." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Elle, not Jennifer. Who was this woman? She confronted Jennifer the next morning, holding up the photo. Who is this? Emily asked sharply. Why does she look exactly like you? Jennifer froze. Her face went pale. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she sank into the nearest chair, trembling. I didn't want you to find out this way, she whispered. But I suppose it was only a matter of time. Emily's eyes narrowed. Find out what? Jennifer looked up, tears forming. My name isn't Jennifer Miller. That was a name I used when I started over. My real name is Laura. Laura Carter. The room went still. Emily's mind raced. That name, why did it sound familiar? Jennifer, Laura continued, her voice shaking. I met your father long before he married your mother. We were young, we were in love, but his family didn't approve of me. I came from nothing. I was just a waitress then. He was already being groomed to take over the business. So, they forced us apart. Emily's mouth was dry, and then Laura's hands clenched. I was pregnant with his child, but I never told him. I was too angry, too proud. I left town and raised the baby alone, until he died in a car accident at 8 years old. It destroyed me. She paused, trying to catch her breath. Years later, I saw your father again by accident. He was at a charity gala. We talked, we cried, but it was too late. He had a family. You? Laura smiled faintly through her tears. He wanted to make things right. He offered me a job at the company, a way to rebuild my life. That's when I became Jennifer Miller. Emily was stunned. So you and my father? Yes, we became close again, but not in the way you think. It wasn't about romance anymore. It was guilt, regret. We kept it quiet for your mother's sake. And then, when she passed away, things changed. Emily stood there in disbelief. The woman she had grown to admire, trust, had been hiding the most painful secret imaginable. I thought I could finally have a family again, Laura said softly. But I didn't want to take anything from you. I just wanted to belong. And the will? Emily asked. He left you half the house, half the company. Why? Laura's eyes filled with guilt. Because he saw me as the mother of his first child, and he wanted to honor what we lost. Emily turned away, overwhelmed. But then Laura added one last thing. There's something else, she said. Your father and I, we had another child. After your mother passed. A daughter. She's 6 years old now. Her name is Grace. Emily spun around, stunned. I have a sister. Laura nodded, holding back sobs. He never told anyone. He was afraid of what it would do to you, to your brother. But he loved her deeply. He visited us almost every day. A sister, a child hidden from the world. Emily's world shattered again. Suddenly, everything made sense. The urgency in her father's will, his quiet trips out of town, the way Jennifer at him during the funeral, not as a gold digger but as someone mourning an entire life they had built in secret. But if this was all true, what else was hiding beneath the surface? The room fell into a stunned silence. Karen's revelation about her past identity, her secret marriage, the child she lost, and the fact that she was not who they thought she was, hung heavy in the air. No one could speak at first. The weight of decades of deception, guilt, and shame crushed everyone differently. Linda, who had always considered Karen a loyal friend, stood up slowly, her face pale. "You mean, all these years you've been living with us under a different name? How could you keep something like that from me?" Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with the ache of betrayal. Karen's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted to lie to you, Linda. I didn't even know I was going to find him again. I was forced to run, to protect myself, to protect my son." Across the table, Michael, Karen's son, who had grown up calling Linda Mom, was frozen. His mind reeled. He had just learned that his real mother wasn't who he thought, and his entire identity was unraveling. "You're saying you're my real mom?" he whispered. Karen nodded, unable to speak. Michael looked at Linda, then back at Karen. "Why didn't anyone tell me? Why did you both lie?" Linda stepped closer, tears falling freely. "We didn't mean to lie. We were told you had died. When they handed you to me, they said your mother had vanished, that she was unstable. I believed them. I raised you as my own. I loved you as my own." Michael turned away. Overwhelmed. In the corner, George, Karen's husband, stood in disbelief. "Karen, is anything we had real?" His voice was low, almost broken. Karen turned to face him. "Yes, you were the first good thing that happened. To me, after everything, I didn't marry you to hide. I married you because I loved you. But you kept all of this from me," George replied. "How do I know what to believe anymore?" Just then, Thomas's family lawyer cleared his throat. "There's more you need to know." Everyone turned. Thomas opened a folder. "The man Karen was married to, the one she ran from, he didn't just disappear. He was murdered, and someone in this room might know why." The room exploded in whispers. George looked stunned. Michael's face drained of color. Linda gasped. "What are you saying?" Thomas placed a document on the table. "A new witness has come forward. Someone saw who visited him the night he died, and that person matched a description of Michael." Michael stood up. "What? I was just a teenager." Thomas raised his hand. "I'm not accusing, but the timeline's in now with this new revelation about who your mother is. Everything's being reinvestigated." Karen looked terrified. "He had nothing to do with it. He didn't even know the truth until today." George interrupted, his voice louder now. "You mean we might be living in a house with a killer?" "George," Karen snapped, "don't you dare say that about my son." "But he's not my son," George retorted bitterly. The room fell silent again from the back. Nancy, the family's longtime housekeeper, finally spoke. "I've kept quiet for years, but I can't anymore." Everyone turned to her that night. "I saw someone sneak into the house. It wasn't Michael." Thomas leaned forward. "Who was it?" Nancy hesitated, then pointed across the room. Husband John. Gasps echoed through the room. Linda collapsed into her chair. Karen whispered, "Why? Why would he do that?" Nancy looked down. "Because he found out about Michael's real identity, and he wanted to erase the past completely." Michael was shaking. Linda clutched her chest, her world falling apart. George sat down, speechless. "This family is built on secrets." Karen nodded. "And it's time those secrets come to light." For days after the shocking revelation, the house remained cold and silent. Tension hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Everyone had been shaken by the truth about Emma. The woman they'd known for over 2 decades wasn't just a loving wife and mother. She was someone else entirely, with a past carefully hidden beneath layers of lies and sacrifice. But silence never lasts in a house. Filled with secrets, John, still reeling from the betrayal, became obsessed with uncovering everything. He dug deeper into Emma's history, not out of curiosity, but driven by a painful mixture of rage and heartbreak. What he discovered next would turn the tide once again. Emma hadn't just married him under a false identity. She had done it to escape a man who had threatened her life, a man named Richard Grayson. He was powerful, connected, and vicious. Emma's fake identity wasn't just deception, it was protection. Years ago, she had testified against Richard in a domestic abuse case. The system failed her, so she disappeared, assuming a new name and starting a new life. But Richard never stopped looking, and now that Emma's identity had been exposed during the funeral chaos, it was only a matter of time before he found her again. When John learned this, something inside him changed. His anger was still there, but it shifted from Emma to the man who forced her into hiding. He may not have forgiven her, but he couldn't sit by and watch her be hunted down like an animal. Meanwhile, Emma didn't run. She had done enough running in her life. Instead, she went to the authorities, prepared to face the consequences. She told them everything. the name she used, why she changed it, and the man who had haunted her for years. She even brought evidence, old letters, photographs, scars that hadn't faded. It was time for the truth to fight back. Detective Rivera, a seasoned investigator with a soft spot for women like Emma, took on the case personally. "This isn't just about protecting her," he told John. "It's about setting things right." Richard was located in a nearby city, still living lavishly off dirty money. But his confidence was his weakness. With Emma's testimony and Rivera's strategy, a sting operation was set into motion. John, once the betrayed husband, agreed to play a crucial role. He lured Richard to a supposed business meeting, recorded their conversation, and caught him admitting to past crimes. Abuse, threats, even attempted murder. The evidence was damning. Richard was arrested within days. News of the arrest spread quickly. Emma's name, the real one, was finally cleared. The media painted her as both a mystery woman and a survivor. While some criticized her for hiding the truth, many more stood by her side, calling her brave, even heroic. But justice came with a cost. Emma was charged with identity fraud, a crime she never denied. She stood in court, not as a victim this time, but as a woman willing to face the consequences of her choices. The courtroom was packed. Even some members of John's family were there, unsure of how to feel. When asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Emma's voice didn't tremble. "I was scared for my life. I ran, yes, but I never meant to deceive the people I love. I became a wife and a mother, not to hide, but because I wanted to live. If that makes me guilty, I accept it." The judge, visibly moved, delivered a sentence that surprised everyone: probation and community service. "Sometimes the law must consider the spirit behind the act," he said. Outside the courthouse, John waited. Their eyes met for the first time in weeks. There was no anger in his face, only exhaustion and something resembling understanding. He didn't take her hand, but he also didn't walk away. "You saved yourself," he said quietly, "and maybe ... you saved me too." It wasn't a reconciliation, not yet, but it was a beginning, a path cleared by truth, pain, and a fierce fight for justice in Emma. She finally breathed freely, her real name restored, her fear behind her, and her future, though uncertain, finally hers to own.